RNA exists, you can capture it, you can sequence it, you can move it to other cells and recapitulate disease concern. But one thing I am confident of from everything I've read is that this RNA exists, you can capture it, you can sequence it, you can move it to other cells and recapitulate disease concern. But one thing I am confident of from everything I've read is that this RNA exists, you can capture it, you can sequence it, you can move it to other cells and recapitulate disease.
Check. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for Doctors for Accountability in Medicine and Media. My name is Del Bigtree. My background, I was a producer on the Emmy Award-winning television show, The Doctors. For 6 years, I spent my career celebrating the best that medicine has to offer, the best science, the best doctors, cutting-edge techniques, new surgeries. I'm a fan of great doctors and great medicine. While working on that show, I stumbled upon the story of Dr. William Thompson, the whistleblower from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention that came forward in the fall of 2014 to let us know that the CDC had been corrupted and that they were committing scientific fraud on their vaccine studies, specifically the MMR vaccine, the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine, and its causal relationship to autism. I made a movie about that, produced it, called Vaxxed. Actually, tomorrow will be the 1-year anniversary of the first premiere of Vaxxed. Yeah. That began a journey for me, as I think many of the people you're about to hear from today, that takes you out of what you believed was the foundation in truth and science, and specifically to vaccine research and testing. Once you start asking the appropriate questions about the vaccine program in this nation, and the one that really is promoted all around the world, you begin a journey that takes you to some very scary realities. These people here today represent some of the people that I've studied and investigated and interviewed for some of my research and the work that I'm doing. They only represent a handful of the many, many doctors across this nation and the world that are standing up now and asking for real accountability in vaccine safety, research, testing, and the promotion of future vaccines and those we're using on our children. I'm going to let them do the talking today because we live in a nation right now that wants to say the science is settled around vaccines. What that means is we're done. We're saying that we accept a vaccine program that this year will murder children. That's a fact. There will be children who will lose their lives this year to the vaccine program that would have had an otherwise totally normal life, could have gone on to become President of the United States or a future scientist with some great new breakthrough. They will not be here because of this vaccine program. Other children will suffer paralysis. Some will have their brains damaged permanently for life. And recently, I've been asking this question of some fairly high-up officials. And what I say is, how is that where we're settled? And they say, well, science has determined that that's an acceptable casualty. We have an accepted casualty in order to reach herd immunity in the United States of America. And so I follow that question with that statement with my own question, which is, please tell me how many children exactly are going to die this year from our vaccine program. Could you please tell me exactly how many children's minds will be ruined for their lives or will be paralyzed? And the answer you get from the mainstream medical community is, we don't have the data on that. So how do we have an acceptable casualty if we don't know what number we're accepting? I think that's the beginning of the first question anybody should be asking right now. So when we live in a nation that says that vaccines are safe and effective, which actually flies in the face of the highest court in the land right here in this town, the Supreme Court, which ruled in 2011, made the official statement vaccines are unavoidably unsafe. I would like to know how the medical community stands in direct opposition to that statement made by the highest court in the land and repeats constantly, vaccines are safe and effective. That duality inside this nation between our medical establishment and the highest court in the land should be the beginning of a question that allows us to have true conversation, open conversation about the science of vaccines.
Stop lying!
If we cannot question science, then it is no longer science. It has become a religion. And much of the way this situation is addressed, this medicine is addressed, this vaccine program is addressed, is like a religion. If you question it, you are a heretic.
Stop
if you
lying!
question why there's a duality between the Supreme Court and the medical establishment, you are a heretic. We are the greatest nation in the world. We have the greatest scientists in the world. And I don't believe we should say the science is settled. We can do better. We must do better. And for any scientist that wants to say they have settled at a place where innocent children's lives will be destroyed, I say, please step out of the way and let the future scientists come in and figure out a way to create immunity in our children, health in our children, that is safe and effective for every single child in this nation and around the world.
The rules, protect yourself at all times. Follow my instructions. Keep it clean, touch gloves if you wish, and let's do it.
Sweaty palms.
This is so crazy. Like goosebumps. This is so crazy. I feel so nervous. Like, what in the world, man?
Just it's literally turning into worst case scenario. And I'll tell you, there's a very, very clear reason why that will be, is because the medical infrastructure will become overwhelmed. Okay, and there's only so many ICU beds that are going to be able to intubate someone and give
Life support. Really?
Yeah. And right now, I'll tell you this: the whole concept that there'll be a neural element to it, it's not going to get on their radar because they're just going to be swamped by the numbers that are just showing the pneumonia.
I should also point out that our viewers will have noticed that we are sitting here unmasked. And I should point out that actually we are, in an interesting sense, a model of something that I believe is not on the public radar. So if I'm correct, you, Robert, have had COVID.
I've had COVID and I've been fully vaccinated with Moderna.
All right. Steve, you have been vaccinated.
Fully vaccinated with Moderna.
All right. I am unvaccinated, but I am on prophylactic ivermectin. And the data actually, shocking as this will be to some people, the data suggests that prophylactic ivermectin is something like 100% effective at preventing people from contracting COVID when taken properly. So aside from the risk that possibly the ivermectin I got wasn't real, and I have every reason to think it was, it certainly appears to be the genuine article, I believe that what we have here is a demonstration of a kind of composite herd immunity, where through 3 different routes, COVID, vaccine, and ivermectin, we are protected, and you are
That's fair.
Doubly protected. So I would...
There's no way to rule out that somebody didn't let this puppy loose intentionally. And who would want to let loose an agent in the the literally beating industrial heart of China, I doubt it was the People's Republic of China. So I can't resolve, these different potential ways that this agent could have gotten loose. But the furin cleavage site and some of the other signs, whether or not there's an HIV sequence in there, it looks an awful lot like something that came out of laboratory research. And but in a sense, it kind of doesn't matter, because here we are. It's
actually,
JJCouey's
insistence, and I think he's right, on calling them transfections rather than vaccines.
And I also now know that our friend Jonathan Couey, who some of you will know from his lab leak series early in the pandemic called JC on a Bike, Journal Club on a Bike, that he also has advanced a version of this hypothesis. So I don't claim it to be unique. I do think I arrived at it independently.
Has now just come right back up. So I want to catch people up, and then I want you to pick up your explanation. So what I argued, and I believe I came up with this independently, but I believe Peter McCullough has mentioned something similar, as has Jonathan Couey.
Well, maybe it wasn't a lab leak. Maybe it was deliberate. That's one thing you have to consider. But the other thing is, you just look at the genome. There are so many different things that have been changed. There's at least a dozen things in that genome that are very odd and that cause specific medical problems. So there are things in that genome that are there to impact your immune system, and make it harder for you to fight off the infection.
I'm afraid that the latest data tells us that we're dealing with essentially a worst case scenario, which is we're dealing with actual assaults on the prion protein, and then you get into the domain of transmissible spongiform encephalopathies.
I'm not sure exactly who he is. His name is JJCouey, and I believe he's a consultant for CHD, and I believe he has a PhD in some sort of scientific discipline, from what I understand.
He introduced Jonathan, who's going to talk about his latest kind of distillation of what the pandemic means to society, to biology, to science, and to democracy, and the whole kind of idea of empiricism and integrity.
Your latest video with Paul was amazing, JJ.
Wow,
Really,
that's a very nice compliment. Thank you very much. Can you hear me better now or not?
Yes.
Much better.
It was really it nailed down two things for me, but I finally really understand the infectious clone idea. And I think it's very, very likely what happened. It aligns so well.
The gigaspiral has gone, the weed has taken the hyper association induced by excess THC intoxication has led to a state of, how should we say, hyper connection vigilance, right? That this is this, this is this, this is this, and this connects to this, right? And so he's taking, it's a complex series of variables that you're having to deal with. And like I say, because he's such a slimy little shit, skinny barzoon, that he was courting the no virus people, and they turned around and shit on him too, right? No one likes him, literally, right? As how should we say, I had dinner and intemperate as I come across on the internet. And I have people clutching their pearls, I'm actually far easier to get along with than Gigaspiral.
It's like Jay said, the RNA can't pandemic. It can't. And there's no reason to discuss this anymore because it's clear. And if it's clear, we shouldn't waste time talking about it. It's like Jay said, the RNA can't pandemic. It can't. And there's no reason to discuss this anymore because it's clear. And if it's clear, we shouldn't waste time talking about it.
And then there are people who have inspired a lot of thought for me, people like JJCouey, who's regarded by some people as sort of this kind of savant or idiot or something whose ideas are just too terrible and too incompatible with the biology that they learned. And in many ways, they are. But that's throwing baby out with bathwater. I mean, the best thinkers in the world all fall through and suffer through the consequences of 10 bad ideas for every good one. The best creative thinkers. And so if you're going to jump on every one of the ideas that a person comes up with that you don't disagree with, that you don't agree with, and use that as tar to smear the person, I think that's just, you're never going to get ahead in the world yourself. You won't find the muses, the creative inspiration. So I certainly think that JJCouey's overall take is very good.
But you can tell if someone's lying. You can sort of feel it in people. And I have lied. I'm sure I'll lie again. I don't want to lie. I don't think I'm a liar. I try not to be a liar. I don't want to be a liar. I think it's like really important not to be a liar.
I think truth is good for kids. We're so busy lying, we don't even recognize the truth no more in this society. We want everybody to feel good. That's not the way life is.
I don't care how you get there. I don't care what you do to get there. The goal is to win.
What time is it? Game time! Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show. I hope you enjoyed that introduction. We lost wrestling legend Hulk Hogan. I hope I didn't have anything to do with that. Boy, I hope mentioning him and his connection to Peter Thiel and his connection to, why isn't that playing? I may need to briefly escape here and restart. That should be better. Yes, so we lost this wrestling legend who actually also showed up at the Republican National Convention. Trump was, announced, or J.D. Vance was announced by him. Isn't it wonderful to now realize that he owed Peter Thiel's lawyers about $25 million, probably some of the same lawyers that have been helping Donald Trump out of some of his worst messes in the last few years. Ladies and gentlemen, it's all one big show. I think we can start to really connect things. Like I said, I hope Hulk Hogan didn't meet his demise because we exposed him as a witness to this.
Actually, JJCouey.
It is definitely true that we need to get ourselves and our kids off of social media. And so it is with great urgency that I suggest that we start teaching our kids that this is ruled by podcast. And if we allow this to keep going, we may not be able to turn the ship around anymore. That's indeed what this slide is all about. I'm trying to get the word out there that we need to teach our children what they're doing on these waves before we send them out into the real ocean. Maybe even the social media that they're on while they're in high school needs help. Certainly they are all on Robert Malone's dumb script with regard to the virus and with regard to vaccines. I'm not saying Robert Malone is the script writer for Israel or for any other types of international relations, but the biology script that these people have been on, specifically on this screen, are people who've been following a script of Robert Malone and Kevin McKernan. I have very little doubt in that. That's because one of the guys on this screen actually told me to stop talking about Robert Malone a couple, 2-3 times. Another one of these guys on the screen paid me for about 1.5 years to be a scientific advisor, where I had the opportunity to teach him a lot of the biology that I've been teaching here and teaching you. And unfortunately, he didn't take well to my coaching, and that's a pity, but that is because he was put in place a long time ago to curate this narrative. He was put in place a long time ago not even knowing how he would be used. He thought he would be, eventually a vice presidential candidate that might or might not get absorbed into one of the leading tickets. He did a lot wrong. Boy, oh boy, did we do a lot wrong.
But you can tell if someone's lying.
I had a problem because, they tried to provide me with the script too, and they really wanted me to follow along with the script too. And if I followed along with the script, well, I kind of believe that I might be a Brownstone fellow or maybe still working for CHD, but I did not follow the script like these people did, and I didn't sign at the line. I'm not part of this Scooby-Doo, the ghost of health freedom. I've been staying focused on the biology lately. I haven't been taking the bait on social media, and I have been loving my neighbors. The ghost of health freedom is continuing, though. The ghost of health freedom, of course, is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and the Barrington Declaration with Jayanta Bhattacharya. It's with that little child, Vinay Prasad, and it is also with the UK citizen and foreign agents from Turkey, like Dr. Oz, like Marty McCary. The reason why I'm excited, ladies and gentlemen, let me just pop myself down here on the bottom. The reason why that I'm very excited, welcome to the show. Hi, my name is JJCouey. I'm coming to you live from Gigaohm Biological headquarters in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in the back of my garage. And it's a pretty severe message that I have for you today. It is a pretty intense message because I do think that this whole big show, the Human Genome Project and all of its wonder, the rollout of AI, the talking about climate change, the nuclear weapons, nuclear war, and the threat of total global destruction. This stuff is all out there as a complex web of mythologies to make sure that you don't understand the very basics of your own biology and don't understand that intramuscular injection, never come to realize that intramuscular injection is actually just a dumb idea from the late 1800s, back when people used morphine a lot. And I have evidence on my desk beyond refute at this stage. It is beyond refute. This book and 2 other books that I have PDFs of will definitively demonstrate beyond a shadow of a doubt that intramuscular injection is a dumb idea that remains a really bad remnant in our healthcare system, in our healthcare principles, in our healthcare methodology toolbox. And it originates from the late 1800s, where wide adoption of this methodology as a new found, let's say, universal methodology for a wide variety of medical applications, and it is the hypodermic needle. Now, the hypodermic needle needs to be understood for what it is. The hypodermic needle only does what the user does with it. Just like a pistol is only dangerous if you have somebody in your house that likes to point it at you a lot. A pistol's only dangerous if it's loaded and the trigger is pulled when its muzzle is pointed at something you didn't mean to destroy. And a hypodermic needle could have many potential uses with regard to putting fluid where you want it to be, in a precise location, in a precise concentration, in a precise volume. And there's no doubt that in theory that methodology could be very useful. Just like a rifle could be very useful for small game hunting, for large game hunting. A large caliber 45 caliber mountain gun could also be useful for home defense. But it would be terrible for for the disciplining of your children. It would be terrible if you put those bullets into your car or into your television set when you were completely angry about the football game. And so the reality is, ladies and gentlemen, that this elaborate hoax, this Maha movement that metamorphed from a shitty anti-vax movement headed by Brian Hooker and Suzanne Humphreys and oh my gosh, I can't even come up with all these awful names, and James Lyons Weiler and Paul Thomas and Mary Holland and Meryl Nass. These people were all put in place to make sure you'd never realize that intramuscular injection, the use of a hypodermic needle to put a combination of substances into the muscle of a healthy human, is one of the dumbest ideas we've ever had in medicine. And it originates back to the late 1800s. And we have been spellbound by it ever since. And it is very possible that many of the people in the Maha movement with MDs and PhDs and MSPs after their name, Masters in Public Health, MPHs after their name, they all don't understand. Because it's a little bit like lemmings. It's actually possible that it's not evil. It's actually possible that there are people behind the scenes that are pushing the cart forward that are evil. But the vast majority of people don't even understand why the cart is moving. They just know that they don't want to fall off of it. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to be overly dramatic, but we can end this because our children can understand that. The history is understandable. The context is perfect. And so I think what's most spectacular is that we've also pushed the envelope of what we can call a myth, and we have remained unchecked. We have remained unchallenged. The autism spectrum disorder is a mythology which disguises intramuscular injection as some kind of flawed medical methodology instead of just something that is plain stupid. Keep in mind, I'm using as precise of language as possible for you to understand that a hypodermic needle to deliver a certain combination of substances to your skin or to a certain cavity in your body might actually be a very, very useful application for a hypodermic needle. I am saying that intramuscular injection is not one of them. And I'm saying that that's why we have a fake health freedom movement in America. If you want to be notified when my family gets back in a week and a half, please send an email to gigaohmhq@proton.me and we'll get on that right away. You're not probably getting notifications right now because I'm allowing my wife to enjoy vacation, which is, why you would go on vacation in the first place. And I'm not sending those because it takes me long enough just to get the thing going. And so you might think, oh yeah, but then you could just send an email. No, it's just one more thing I got to do. And so we're just not doing that. And that's the way it is. It's a one-man show. And I mean a one-man, 2-dog, 6-chicken show right now. So it's pretty hectic around here. Listen carefully.
Problems and, they still talk about making us the 51st state. So maybe I just went north to find my...
In case you don't remember, this is Angela Rasmussen. I believe she's formerly of Georgetown. Now she works at Saskatchewan or the University of Saskatchewan at a virology center, or it's a vaccine research center. I don't know which. Remember that this woman was scripted at the beginning of the pandemic to push natural leak or natural virus coming from a bat cave. Lab leak would be ridiculous. More importantly, Kevin McCairn actually had lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of love for this lady. He made meme after meme after meme and talked about her all the time. I think he kind of fantasized about her, to be honest. Anyway, she's on Twiv, which is hilarious because actually it's not that hilarious because they all work for the same people. If you watch this whole interview, you will be shocked at how many people they actually worked with at the same time. This is a very small team of scripted shitheads, and that's why this scripted shithead needed to be shipped up to Canada.
Myself still in the U.S.
All right, so Tryon wants to know how you can prevent accidental intravenous injection of mRNA vaccines, right? Because there's this. Do you believe that some people who get myocarditis is because the vaccine was accidentally put in a vessel?
Okay, so now you have the crossing of narratives, which I think is very important for you to understand the exact coordinates of it, because a member of the Steve Kirsch Steering Committee and a member of PANDA, a French guy by the name of Marc Giraudeau, who is a former process engineer somewhere for a car company or some other thing. I don't know. He worked in a bunch of places. He's a real egomaniac because he believes that all injection injuries can be explained because they miss the muscle and they hit a vein. And when they hit a vein, then all kinds of crazy stuff happens, including the fact that the mRNA could go to the heart or something. He uses examples from people who are injecting testosterone. He uses examples of little balls falling down the stairs. He is a scripted fool. And because he is on the Steve Kirsch Steering Committee and also plays a daily role in PANDA for 4 years and is also promoted by both of those groups over the last 4 years. He was almost on Brett Weinstein, but I told Brett Weinstein if he had him on his show, then he would be admitting that he's entirely scripted. But of course, we know now that Brett Weinstein is entirely scripted. I was naive back then, thinking that Brett was just not listening to me. No, Marc Giraudeau is a scripted fool that has been on a lot of podcasts, probably has a book, although I'm not aware of it and I'm not going to suggest you look for it. But he's been on John Campbell's program before. He's been on Doc Malik before. He's been on all the podcasts. And now they're actually talking about his theory. These two super clown virologists. This guy is the guy who supposedly invented the infectious clone with David Baltimore. Transfecting cell cultures with the purported sequence of a virus and getting more virus. It's like it's infectious, man. Infectious clones. They invented that. He invented it. They shared postdoc advisors. And now they are doing the other half of the theater that Robert Malone and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. do the other half of. Because these two would get along great with Paul Offit, for example.
I've never seen any evidence that suggests that. So, no, I'd have to see some evidence that did suggest that. As far as avoiding accidental IV injection, though, I'm not a clinician. I could tell you how to do it on a mouse's tail, but I don't know how you could avoid that. I think the biggest, I actually don't think that would be that big of a risk, though.
Now, here's what I think is most revealing about this. I think that these scripted traders are scripted in a very compartmentalized way. I think they are very limited in their understanding of what Robert Malone and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. have been doing over the last years. I think they're very limited because their script is the other side, and so they have a lot of details there. And that's what also gives them confidence that they're right. And so the less they know about the other side, the less sophistication they have about the details that are walked by the other side, the easier it is for them to just kind of feign like they really don't get it. It doesn't really make much sense to me because I already understand everything. And so what you see here after 6 years of this show is how indeed compartmentalized even the actual actors are. And that's what makes the theater so damn convincing. Robert Malone is never going to sit down at a table with these guys and drink. But he's traveled the world with the people on his side, like Meryl Nass and Jessica Rose and Pierre Corey. And they've all been, in foreign hotels together and had breakfast together while she has eaten and worked with these other people. You know, like maybe Topol at Scripps or Anderson or those kinds of people would all be glad to meet her up in Canada and have dinner. And so both sides need to have script writing and script curating members which understand the direction that they're supposed to hold. And they don't necessarily have to understand how that direction relates to the directions that other people are supposed to hold in order to maintain this really malevolent script.
I mean, I've never accidentally IV injected like an animal when giving an intramuscular injection.
So, for a while.
So she's never injected an animal intravenously when she was trying to give intramuscular because she doesn't know, but she says that because she believes it. Like you could know with a mouse. I mean, it's remarkable, but this is the level of sophistication that these people actually have. And that I now understand is probably crucial to the stability of this pattern in the lemmings. And that's what it is. It's a pattern in the lemmings. And the stability has to do with the same stability that swarm of birds does. It's not really due to just one bird. It's like every fifth or sixth bird has to be on a certain page. Otherwise, it's not going to go in that direction. It's going to go somewhere else. And so right now we're in a flock of birds where we don't even realize that we could choose to fly another direction and we would leave like 5 birds behind. There would be like 20 birds over here still flying around the lab leak and still talking about Maha and whether Maha needs to be held together or not, and we would have all flown away already and just accepted the fact that intramuscular injection's a dumb idea, so I don't even know why we're arguing about it. I don't know why there's a vaccine schedule in the first place. I don't know why there's an ACIP. I don't know why we have a PrEP Act. But we're not there yet. We're not ready to fly away, but we could. Because right now the illusion of the flock is being sustained by planted individuals whose contact with everyone else is artificially created. I mean, this would end in a matter of weeks if I could reach the number of people that are reached by these people.
There were some people were pulling back on the needle before putting the vaccine in, just to make sure you're not in a.
So don't forget, right? Campbell did like 3 shows about aspirating the needle before he talked to Marc Girardeau about it. This is crucial to understand. This is not by accident. This is by script, by national security script, that they are asking the same stupid questions.
Vessel, but Daniel said that is not really necessary. So.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just don't know that much about it because I've only really given ever injections to mice, but it doesn't, we have like an 80-year history of giving vaccines by intramuscular injection, and this has never been any other vaccine, and I just don't see why it would be.
We have an 80.
I ask who is funding Ebola research, but if you have security,
wow, we have an 80.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just don't know that much about it because I've only really given ever injections to mice, but it doesn't, we have like an 80-year history of giving vaccines by intramuscular injection, and this has never been a problem for any other vaccine, and I just don't.
So is it possible for you to consider the idea that she just doesn't know? That she just has read it, she's been told it, Paul Offit told her. When she met Tony Fauci, he said it, they all say it. Every time she looks it up, that's what the book says. We have an 80-year history. Goes back to polio or something. Isn't there a guy named Salk? I think that's how it went. Is it possible that she, in her admission that she doesn't really know very much because she's not a clinician, that she's just never really thought that in depth about how the human body and the human immune system works? What role it might play with interacting with our microbiome in our gut and the microbiome on our skin, and how that irreducibly complex symphony might be, screwed up if we were to just squirt stuff into our muscle. It's really remarkable. that you can hear it. They don't know. It's not evil, ladies and gentlemen. It's not a depopulation plan. The vast majority of the people that are involved in this are too unsophisticated to understand. They're just trying to stay on their surfboard and not get pounded into the coral.
See why it would be for these vaccines.
I don't know why it would be for these vaccines. So you see, they are still trapped. It's possible. Now, maybe not her, but a lot of other people are as a result of these two performing so flawlessly, using the term vaccine as if it is a proven thing, as if a demonstrated thing that has a very specific definition. You know, like back in the 90s when they started calling uterine cancer AIDS. You know, because anything that you get when you're positive becomes AIDS. So it could be anything. Anything when you're positive for the antibodies could potentially be caused by the AIDS. Ladies and gentlemen, we're there. We can break this. Because they are admitting that their depth of understanding is so limited. Their ability to explain this in detail is so limited. That's why Robert Malone exists. That's why Kevin McKernan exists. That's why David Baltimore is still running. That's why this guy's still running around. Because they must maintain an illusion of certainty. Just like Paul Offit does. They must maintain this illusion of certainty even though they don't, I don't know, I guess we've been given intramuscular injections for like 80 years and it's been fine. That's all she's got to say. Now understand that over the last 6 years, I went from giving all my kids all the shots to thinking that CHD and Brian Hooker were fighting for justice for those few unfortunate people that were injured by the shots because my kids weren't hurt by them. And that some or all of the autism is, I already understood that a lot of autism isn't caused by vaccines because we study a lot of shit in neuroscience that we call autism and autism spectrum that's definitely not related to vaccines as I understood it then. Then I moved farther and farther and farther until I finally got to the point where I could say that intramuscular injection actually is just a dumb idea from the late 1800s. It's probably a really bad idea to inject something intramuscularly, a combination of substances, with the idea that you could augment an immune system. That's ridiculous. It's not organized that way. And then I found out that there were people like Brandy Vaughn and Tony Bark who were saying it exactly like that at the same time when somebody like Suzanne Humphreys decided to publish a book and say it kind of like that on the same stages as them. And then at the start of the pandemic, those two were dead. And all of these people have risen through social media ranks to become financially stable, independent, whatever, to make money, to be rewarded for staying on the same script that Del Bigtree has been on since probably 2015 or so. I guess 14, when supposedly the first time the CDC exposed itself as being a shitty organization or something. You got to listen to that again, and we will.
Christina says, I was going to ask who is funding Ebola research, but if you have security clearance, I guess that answers my question.
Not really. I've had Ebola funding from NIH, from NIAID. I've had it from DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. I've had it from DTRA, the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, and I got a good score, and hopefully I'll get it from the Canadian Institutes of Health Research.
So she's been funded by DTRA because, you know, DTRA's funny because Robert Malone's best friend who used to sleep on his couch, David Hone, that guy's actually the head of DTRA, Australian dude. And Robert Malone told Stephen Hatfield on the Tommy podcast a couple years ago that he was vetted to be head of US AMRID, where an Iranian guy by the name of Sina Bavari is the head. And he wrote a paper in 2019 with the last postdoc of Ralph Barrick, Alison Totura. She was on Jeopardy. Anyway, Alison Totura and Sina Bavari wrote a paper about how there might be a bat cave coronavirus and remdesivir might really be really good for it. And so then working with David Hone and Ditra at the start of the pandemic on some program called Domain, Robert Malone was able to use AI and computer-aided crystallography of viral proteins and AI-aided scanning of all the pharmaceuticals in the FDA catalog to identify remdesivir, famotidine, celecoxib, and one other drug as potentially useful, ivermectin. I mean, you can't make this up. This is all one malevolent script. And that's why the TWIV did an interview with Peter Daszak about 6 months before the pandemic started. It's all one malevolent show. It's all one malevolent script with a bunch of state actors. She's one of them. He's one of them. Malone is one of them. McKernan is one of them. Rose is one of them. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is one of them. Meryl Nass is one of them. Mary Holland is one of them. And Brian Hooker is one of them. Polly Tommy is an agent from the UK. Andrew Wakefield is an agent from the UK. These are all scripted frauds, which are out there to make sure that you don't understand that all intramuscular injection is always dumb.
On a future grant application. But there's a lot of reasons to fund Ebola research. So I want to make it really clear that the reason I have a
Don't forget that Robert Malone has a security clearance, worked on Ebola, worked on Zika, has spoken in front of the WHO and handed the mic back to Rick Bright in 2011. These are big players on the world stage of public health. And the idea is to invert your sovereignty. The idea was to take a already known, very shitty vaccine schedule because intramuscular injection is dumb. And it's a dumb idea from the late 1800s. The idea was eventually to tell us that this vaccine schedule didn't work as we thought it was. It was very flawed. But the new vaccine schedule, which is essentially a personalized one based on transfection, will be better. That is the plan that this group of traitors is scripted to bring us to, just like the group of scripted traitors that is headed by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Mary Holland, Meryl Nass, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., all these people. It's the same shitty script. Where eventually we're going to scratch our heads and say, you know what, I think the old vaccine schedule was kind of bad. But lucky we're not doing that anymore. We're transfecting people, and that can be personalized. There's always room for improvement when you're using mRNA.
security clearance, and it's not like a top secret security.
And so they just need to stick to the provided script. They do not need to know how their lines fit in with other people. This video that I showed you in the beginning of this show is from 2017. You have to understand why it's so malevolent, why it's so gross that Tony Bark was killed in 2020 in the same year and just before Brandy Vaughn was killed. Why it's gross that guy served as campaign manager for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. when he was running for president. Why it's gross that he's now the head of MAHA. Why it's gross that he made the Vaxxed movie with two foreign agents, Wakefield and Tommy. Why it's gross that he talks about his career as being 6 years long. Why it's gross that he talks about a whistleblower, like the diffuse proposal. It was something that was leaked to Charles Rixey, and now he's a whistleblower. If William Thompson is a whistleblower, then he should have been retaliated against the CDC, and he should have tried to bring his concerns up the chain of command at the CDC. If he just comes out of the CDC and leaks some data, then he's not a whistleblower. He's just a leaker. And so if he just leaks something out and then Dell and Brian start telling stories about it, it's much more likely that they're actually part of the same theater than they are leaking the information for the leaker. And once you see that Big Tree and Hooker and Mary Holland and Merrill Nass and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. are not damage control for the CDC leak. They are on the same team as the CDC leak. The CDC leak is the diffuse proposal of the anti-vax movement. And so Vaxxed is Wakefield and Tommy, produced by them. They own property in America and in the UK. This is not settled science versus unsettled science. It's not vaccine science and testing. He hasn't studied or investigated. He's just interviewed people. And now he's telling you a story about individual risk versus societal benefits and unacceptable numbers. He's talking about herd immunity as an accepted biological concept. He's talking about unavoidably unsafe being in contrast with safe and effective. These words aren't the same words that Tony Fauci used in 2020 for nothing. It's because it's the same shitty script that Kevin McKernan was on at the beginning of the pandemic, saying how the FDA was in the way and the 10-page application for an EUA was absurd. The medical establishment is an enchantment that Dell is casting at this moment. The medical establishment has some kind of illusion of consensus about vaccines, right? And we want to break that illusion of consensus, he says. No, it's all effectively sustaining the illusion of consensus that there are safe vaccines, that we should never give up on the pursuit of safe vaccines. We can't stop now with an acceptable number of deaths. We have to move forward and make the vaccine schedule finally safe. This is 10 years ago. This is the same script they're on now. And they'll finally be safe when the vaccine schedule is personalized for every individual genotype and every individual medical history. That's why there would be a fake medical health freedom movement in America. Because intramuscular injection is indeed a dumb idea from the late 1800s, that actually autism spectrum disorder is a myth designed to hide that. And gain of function in pandemics is a way for them now to shift and slowly admit that the vaccine schedule is flawed, but the new one isn't. Please understand, I could not be more over the target with this prediction. And it lines up perfectly with Tony Bark and Brandy Vaughn needing to be killed before these people could do their show at the beginning of the pandemic. They were replaced by these people. That's the reason why nobody will ever talk about these things. No one is ever going to talk about how background could be misconstrued as spread. No one has ever talked about how supplementary oxygen can cause ARDS. It's a toxin. No one can tell you how PCR is used to high fidelity with great results on the academic bench, and how none of those techniques were used in the diagnostics that are still being used today by people like Mary Talley Bowden. No one's ever going to tell you that these countermeasures were always old technologies with previous names, and that they lied about that, just renamed them to get new IP started again. They're never going to tell you that even in its purest form, transfection with mRNA would not be good for a healthy person. They're never going to get there. They're never going to get there to tell you that what Vincent Racaniello and David Baltimore are credited with inventing is simply the transfection and transformation of cell culture using a pure synthetic DNA construct of the purported viral sequence in question. They transfect things. And that's why Vincent Racaniello is Earth's virology professor, because he must sustain that illusion himself. He understands it. Most virologists do not, because it's so right in front of them, they can't see it. That's why they don't attempt to refute RNA cannot pandemic, because the whole idea is too simple. It doesn't compute. Just like intramuscular injection is dumb, never computes for these people. They can't get there. It's like trying to explain to a gun enthusiast without a really nuanced understanding of the dangers of firearms that having guns in your house is not as simple as keeping tools. But you just can't have conversations like that with people when they don't get it, when they just don't understand, when they've been broken by social media, which is what the majority of adults that surround you now in your life are. They are broken from social media. All I can say is, goodness sakes, goodness sakes, goodness sakes, God help us.
Thank you, Mr. Miner. Thank you, Mr. Miner. Thank you, Mr. Miner. Thank you, Mr. Woo.
So that's such a great recording. They hit some pretty good highs there. It's not quite Frank Zappa from Roxy and Elsewhere, but it's damn good jamming. It's damn good jamming. There are a couple other good captures of that band. They're all right. That's okay. Here's a video.
Now, I was on a conference call yesterday. Was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday. Maybe it was Sunday. Anyways, conference call with this with a whole bunch of people in the Global Wellness Forum and in this other signal group that I'm in about Maha Table Talk or something like that.
Okay, so first of all, I want to point out that it's possible that Dr. Sherry Tenpenny doesn't understand how this whole show is being run. She's a doctor, she's got patients, she's got a life. Maybe the same can be said for Lee Merritt, although I doubt that more because she was promoted by NPR in 2020 and 2021, so the odds of her being not a scripted player are pretty low. She's interviewed me a couple times. She's a really nice lady. She's very sweet, but she believes everything that she hears. The last thing she heard is the most interesting things that she knows. And this guy has been on these podcasts with them a lot. These two, Sherry and this guy's name is behind me. I can't remember it off the top of my head. Oh yeah, Larry. They're doctors who are skeptical. They're doctors who are on the Maha movement, but they just still haven't managed to make the functional and directional progress to the point where they start to really think about the root causes, the root understanding of what they know and don't know. They just have this amorphous skepticism of vaccines, the contents of them, and maybe this amorphous skepticism of contagion. And to what extent is it reliable or reproducible? But they have not really gotten to the root of understanding what they know and don't know, and they don't really probably know how to do it. And that's one of the reasons why, unlike myself, which made more progress than the rest of the anti-vax movement has ever made in the course of any time period, never mind 5 years. I went from joining the movement, not understanding it, to attempting to redefine it and attempting to declare the majority of its leaders frauds. That's a lot of progress to make. And now what I see are people who are just caught up in this huge tidal wave of bullshit that has its roots deep in time, in the early 20th century. That's how remarkable this is. It's not evil. It's not depopulation. It's lemmings.
Like that. And Tony Lyons kind of put it together. Tony and Zen Honeycutt and Sayer G. And then this guy, Gary Burge, something that...
Sayer G. Tony Lyons, the head of the campaign for Kennedy, along with Del Bigtree, and originally also Mary Holland before I joined CHD, because again, remember, a brief period of time CHD was without Mary Holland. And Laura Bono was the acting head. And that was when the book work ended and Jackie Hines, okay, anyway, you can see it in the book. She advocated to Laura Bono to hire me, and she did. And when I was hired, it was 2 weeks later that Mary went off of the campaign and back to CHD. She had left CHD to Laura Bono to help with the Kennedy presidential campaign. It wasn't until Laura Bono hired me to CHD from the writing team when I was no longer needed there, that Mary Holland came back. Now that's, in my mind, very crucial to understand, because that's not by accident. That's by necessity, because again, CHD was not being controlled by Laura Bono. Laura Bono is one of these probably very real autism moms, like Brian Hooker was an autism dad at some point, but stopped fighting and started using the word autism somewhere around 2015 or 16, maybe just to be a part of the Vaxxed movie, but more importantly, to help the progress with stepping in front of people like Brandy Vaughn and Tony Bark.
He's got 100 million followers online, and between him and Sayer and Tony Lyons and Zen Honeycutt, they feel like that they have the ears of more than 50% of the country.
More than 50% of the country, more than 50% of all the cats that needed to be herded have been effectively herded by 4 or 5 people in this Steve Bannon conservative populist fake movement in America. We are under attack. These people are unwitting participants. Maybe she's not, but these 3 maybe are. They don't know what's going on. They don't have the biological sophistication, the lifetime of experience that I have. The lifetime experience that I have with the making of the sausage in academia, with the way that people use terms in academia in their grant proposals that have no relation to reality. The way that people write in their grant proposals with a great deal of certainty about what the future holds in their experiments, even though they don't know that. Or sometimes because they do know that. I have a very unique set of skills that I have brought to the table here that they never expected anyone to bring to this table. And if they'd have just let me work at the University of Pittsburgh and not bothered me, I probably would still be just having my head down, trying to realign the differential interference contrast of an Olympus microscope that my students screwed up, instead of doing what I'm doing right now. They blew it. Robert Malone's team blew it. And now what I'm trying to tell all of America that will listen is that the conservative right in America has been fooled by a fake health freedom movement that is run by scripted traitors. I think Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is just a victim of a Truman Show, but that Truman Show is nasty. And it's people like Meryl Nass and Mary Holland and maybe Lee Merritt. Definitely Robert Malone, definitely Kevin McKernan, definitely Jessica Rose, definitely Denny Rancor, definitely Nick Hudson, definitely Jonathan Engler, definitely Claire Craig, definitely Mike Eden, definitely Brian Hooker, definitely Paulie Tommy, definitely Andrew Wakefield. Who else is in this Signal chat organized by Tony Lyons with Sherry Tenpenny?
Even bigger than that. And the argument was made that we really do need to push forward as we the people. And Robert Malone was on that call, and he said something that was kind of interesting, that Merle Nass was on the call too. And they were both speakers. Each speaker had 10 minutes maybe. And and Robert Malone said, they do hear our voice. This is probably the first administration and the cabinet members and stuff that are really feeling the heat of we the people, because we the people are for the first time, maybe ever, or at least in a very long time, paying attention to what they're doing. And that we're really using the masses number of people, because people were calling the people on that committee, because they voted on that pesticide bill on Monday, I think, and to vote it out of committee. And some of the people were reporting that they called their senators, and some of the people were just the aides were just like, they're so sick of hearing this, because they had gotten so many calls, they were just overwhelmed. And so they were talking about a consolidated message that, listen, we the people. And Robert Malone said, he goes, think about this, when Merle Nass took it on, the World Health Organization and the international health regulations and this treaty, nobody knew anything about it. And if Merle wouldn't have dug through it,
if Meryl Nass wouldn't have dug through the regulations of the WHO and brought it to the attention of the world, we might have missed the opportunity to get out of the WHO. We might have missed the opportunity to pull away all of our funding. But it was Robert Malone and Meryl Nass and the Door to Freedom which brought this to the attention of the administration and got them to act.
Stop lying! Stop lying!
Wow. I mean, that's some serious bullshittery.
And threw it up and made a huge big stink about it. Went to Europe and talked to their parliaments and did all these different, nobody would have known anything about it. It would have just passed. And that now
Meryl Nass is the one who got the world to realize that the WHO was trying to pass all kinds of crazy shit. Just like Charles Rixey is the guy who released the diffuse proposal, like Kevin McKernan says. Just like Peter McCullough spoke out about how hearts weren't being hurt by the hydroxychloroquine. And just like Pierre Corey spoke out against the censoring of ivermectin. I don't think Sherry is near sophisticated enough to understand how many liars she's surrounded by, even if in this Zoom meeting there's only one.
we are not doing, we are out of the World Health Organization. We are not approving the international health regulations. And so
again, I think it's a very valid point to make that if the health organization, the World Health Organization, and we're not in it, then we don't have to worry about it. But if we are such a big deal country and so many other countries are dependent on the WHO, then maybe we should dangle some money in front of the WHO in order to influence its operation. But we never bother to do that. America never thinks to do that. We just let Bill Gates in China give all the money to the WHO, and we don't bother to do anything, even though we funded the WHO for the longest time. You see what the problem here is? The normal levers of power are not being used. The normal means by which we would influence world affairs is not being used anymore. And why is that? Because the shift has been made to blaming America for things, to being skeptical of America for things, to blaming a lot of situations in America or in the world on America. That's where we're going. The nation states of the West are responsible for Israel and the atrocities there. Therefore, the nation states of the West will lose legitimacy. The EU will lose legitimacy. America is losing legitimacy by the hour because of the theater that is the Donald Trump administration with the Maha movement and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And this is by design. It's a controlled demolition of America, ladies and gentlemen. And I am terrified for my country. And we need help from other countries. We need help from the left to understand what was done to the right. We need the left to wake up to understand that you have been as bamboozled as the right into believing in spectrums of disorders that do not exist, spectrums of gender that do not exist, spectrum of foreign policy that don't exist, spectrums of racism that don't exist.
Robert Malone, in his crusty way, just listening to what he said, he goes, this just shows you that they are paying attention to us, maybe for the first time ever. And that if we really keep on their butts and really start to hold them accountable, because we the people, and they are paying attention. And, I'm not bought into that lock, stock, and barrel, but I do feel it because I'm on a lot of these calls and I'm in a lot of these committees, and I'm going to DC tomorrow or Saturday, and I'm going to be down there for a couple of days. And it is a little different. I mean, I've used to do a lot of lobbying.
And think about all the energy they are spending when it's a sentence. It's a bumper sticker. Intramuscular injection is a dumb idea from the late 1800s. It basically stems from a time when the town doctor would only have one hypodermic needle, and it would be used for a wide variety of things, including curing neuralgia, curing shingles, injecting morphine. And so it made perfect sense going forward to solve the problem of smallpox inoculation, for example, with intramuscular injection, because variolation on the skin is painful and leaves scars. Intramuscular injection is pain-free, leaves no scar, and can be done very precisely. What is that noise? What is going on in here? Is there a naughty dog somewhere? No. Oh, it's a sleeping dog making noise over there, running in his sleep. Sorry about that. Okay, here we go.
Back years ago when I had lots of money, I was part of the presidential roundtable, Republican roundtable for a while. And, it's like all theater, but there is a little piece of shift that has happened.
It's all theater. She seems to kind of know it, and this little shift means nothing. This little shift is like moving from the MMR to also talking about the DTP, or also talking about aluminum, or also talking about mercury, or also talking about the HPV vaccine, or the absurdity of giving a vaccine on day of birth. These are all details that don't matter if intramuscular injection is just a dumb idea from the late 1800s. They're all secondary ideas. They're not even related, some of them. They're outside of the scope of reality if intramuscular injection is just not medicine.
That I don't think has ever happened before. I mean, think about this, in the last 5 presidents, how many cabinet members could you name? Like none, and now we are.
She's selling the idea that we are making progress, that we are farther than we've ever been before, but despite the fact that she has made no intellectual progress. She's not any better at explaining this than when she first started. Just like Suzanne Humphreys is strikingly not any better at explaining this than when she first started. Both of these likely scripted traders were actually probably on film better at explaining it when Brandy Vaughn and Tony Bark were still alive before the pandemic. I'd bet dollars to donuts. That's how malevolent this shit show is.
On the case of Bobby Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard and Pam Bondi, and you go around the table and say a whole bunch more names. I'm not really great with names, but we know what they're doing. We're watching what they're doing. I mean, huge people with big audiences are watching what we're doing, and I would call that one of the gifts of COVID.
One of the gifts of COVID is that social media has become ever more relevant for the control of political and socioeconomic narratives. Absolutely. One of the gifts to our rulers is our acquiescence to the ubiquitous use of social media for every aspect of our lives. Our free use of apps to manage our calendars so that all of this shit, all of our preferences can be weaponized against us. And none of these people seem to be aware that that was all that would be necessary for the illusion of a lab leak mystery virus to be created, sustained, and used as a weapon against us to the point where we would be coerced into teaching it as truth to our kids. They don't seem to be able to get there, even though I've explained it to that woman a couple times. Even though I used to work for CHD, even though I'm listed in the Wuhan cover-up book as the expert. None of these people have bothered to follow my work long enough to figure it out, to hear it. I think that's because they have to be insulated by the same military industrial programming that keeps them on top of everyone's feed, keeps Robert Malone relevant, keeps Del Bigtree and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and all the podcasts with Jayanta Bhattacharya relevant. That same programming keeps me away from them, keeps Housatonic ITS away from them. They're never going to see critiques of themselves, except for maybe when they see an occasional Healthy American critique because she's on their team. Maybe when they hear a little bad words from somebody like Sasha Latipova, but she's on the team. So it doesn't matter. In fact, as long as they critique Robert Malone, I don't know if I'm completely on board with him or not, it looks like they're kind of in opposition. They're skeptical, so at least I can trust her.
Stop lying!
People went, whoa, what in the hell is going on? What have we've taken our hands off the steering wheel. We thought if we just checked the box, they were down there doing things in our best interest. And because of COVID, we found out what an absolute lie that is. We always kind of thought it was probably a lie, but now it's been exposed like the king has no clothes. You know, the emperor has.
If you see it like a hamster wheel, you understand. Before the pandemic, there was nobody who wasn't skeptical of pharma. There was nobody who wasn't skeptical of big pharma and their profits, their abilities to lie, their amount of money that they put into it. Nobody was skeptical of that at all. Everybody believed that that's the way it was. America's capitalism, right? By any means necessary. Profit, profit, they know that. So it's like a hamster wheel. Now all of a sudden, we kind of didn't know, but now we know for sure. And pretty soon we're not going to know again, but now we know for sure. And well, we weren't sure about the lab leak, but now we know for sure. And you know, before, but now we know for sure. Well, we didn't know for sure that some of the adjuvants were bad for you, but now we know for sure. So that's why the mRNA is so much better. If we just get the DNA contamination out, we'll have finally fixed the vaccine schedule just like Del Bigtree wanted us to back in 2017.
No clothes. And, you know, we know how bad the healthcare system really is. I mean, those people like us have known it for a while, but that's a really small set of people. A
really small set of people that since you guys have been in charge has not really grown at all. The word hasn't gotten out. The messaging hasn't grown. Your ability to explain your position and its merits has not grown. It's gotten worse. Suzanne Humphries has written exactly one book.
Really got to know about the COVID jab and how many people it's hurt and killed. And so there's people that are going, wait a minute, what about the rest of these shots at larger numbers than ever? Somebody just sent me, the Midwestern doctor just sent me an article to read this morning, and he said,
there she is plugging an anonymous Substack that they all plug, including Pierre Corey plugs the Midwestern doctor all the time. He might have a lot of good information, but it is a Substack, and her plugging it is scripted. It's absolutely scripted.
Look at this. All this high number of parents are saying, we don't trust vaccines at all anymore. And so there are shifts.
Think about how helpful it would be if one of these scripted assholes could explain to those parents that don't trust vaccines, that are a little skeptical of vaccines, that they have a good reason to be because intramuscular injection is a dumb idea from the late 1800s.
There are things now. Does that mean that everything is all hunky-dory and we can just, you know, sing Kumbaya and hold hands and go away? Absolutely not. But I do think that there's some shifts going on down there, like the earth shaking in ways that's never before. And that gives room for what you're talking about, Lee, to really get some momentum. Because if they find out about that this whole take your county back and all the things that you're doing.
No, I like take your county back. I like the idea of becoming county sheriff. I like the idea. That's all great. And if that's what Lee Merritt is arguing for, then I'm all for it. But Lee Merritt also talks a lot about shit she doesn't understand, like optogenetics. And that pisses me off. So it makes sense to me in a way that her local organization and this advocation for taking over your county is a great idea. But that great idea is weighed down by the anchor of the dead weight of all this speculative bullshit biology that she engages with almost all the time.
On the common law side, and there's doing this, like you said, 43 states, that is really going to impact DC in a way that 5 years ago they were going, yawn, and not paid any bit of attention to it. But I think it really is shaking some shoes down there.
It's bad.
Not all of them.
It's worse than you think, though.
You swallowed it. And it is what you swallowed into your stomach and into your intestines. So the food you eat goes into your esophagus, down into your stomach, into your intestines, and you poop it out. So guess how this virus was getting into everybody that they're sitting there testing the poop water from? You swallowed it. For sure, you swallowed it. And it's the only thing that makes sense about this whole thing.
And it's not like that's a revelation because you swallow the mucus that you cough up during any respiratory infection. So this is not a new revelation that he just figured out now. It might really actually be a new revelation that he figured out right now because that's what showed up on his stupid script. But this is one of the most malevolent shitheads on earth, and he's been scripted by Robert Malone for quite some time. And you might think for a second here he's going to say something sensible, but he's not. He's not.
So when we get to these DNA plasmids, I didn't know about DNA plasmids until about 4 months ago, actually.
He didn't know about DNA plasmids until about 4 months ago, but he did a Red Pill Expo thing in front of me a year ago. I followed him. My talk was about DNA plasmids and about how virology is just transfection and transformation of cell culture using pure DNA plasmids or pure RNA derived from them. And now he's actually pretending on these shithead podcasts that he figured this out himself. It isn't the script that he was given by Robert Malone. It's him figuring it out because he's working so hard for you.
Never even knew these things existed until I found this on the NIH website. I was like, oh my God, you're putting DNA plasmids? What are these things? Where'd they come from? And I will give credit where it's due. There's a guy named Kevin McKernan.
Oh, he's got to cite his teammate, right? The guy that's been scripting all these assholes since the beginning of the pandemic with Robert Malone. That's exactly how you know he's fake. The guy who has been in front of the Senate a couple times with Senator Ron Johnson and Robert Malone and Jill Glasspool Malone and Jessica Rose. Kevin McKernan is one of the worst Americans alive. And Brian Ardis is admitting that he is a collaborator of one of the worst Americans alive by saying his name out loud right now.
Who brought up the fact that these DNA plasmids exist. Dr. Henry Ely starts sharing all this research with me, and I was like, oh my God, this is how they did it. There was no virus. They used DNA plasmids to do this. I just didn't know that geneticists around the world have been making plasmids since the 60s.
Not geneticists. Geneticists aren't making the plasmids. It's molecular biologists. Molecular biologists that want to transform and transfect animals and cell culture for a wide variety of reasons, including mimicking synthetic biology and virology by transfecting cell cultures with viral constructs. The thing that Vincent Racaniello and David Baltimore, the discoverer of reverse transcriptase, that's the thing that they invented. And you're supposed to believe that this is his best attempt at explaining it after just discovering it 4 frickin' months ago. This is a scripted fraud and one of the worst Americans alive. Brian Ardis.
And putting snake venom and other venoms inside of DNA plasmids that they call spike protein genes. I didn't know they were doing that. I had no idea. You just need plasmids.
Spike protein genes are actually venom genes.
And a venom protein gene inserted inside of that. And then you put inside that plasmid something called a promoter. It's an instruction in genetics, genetic term. It's a promoter that tells the DNA in a mammal cell, or the DNA in a bacteria, or the DNA inside of a yeast cell or fungal cell.
Can you not see how much of a shtick this is? It's an act. He's a snake oil salesman, and if I was able to sit down and talk to him, I could ask him questions which would expose him as the charlatan as he is. He wouldn't be able to explain his way out of a wet paper bag. That's how shitty his script is and how far out on a plank he is. And the plank has one nail in it. It's coming out really fast as he bounces up and down on it like it's a diving board. He's a dumb shit. And this is evidence of him not being an intelligent genius, but being a scripted dumbass. Because none of this makes any sense. And especially it doesn't make any sense to admit that you didn't even know that they made DNA plasmids until 4 months ago. The whole basis for sequencing PCR and the whole charade of the Human Genome Project is based on that fundamental methodology, you gigantic scripted traitor.
To make the spike protein gene and spit it out of you. So bacteria and yeast suck in the plasmids, your own cells suck in the plasmids, and then they release the actual venom into the body or the environment, wherever it is. And that's how they got COVID inside of you. Just so you know, anybody out there living with long hauler COVID symptoms after having a mild case of COVID, you had DNA plasmids with the spike protein genes of king cobras and bungarotoxin in your body. They called COVID. Even PCR tested it and found that's what you had. And then you have had lingering symptoms for 1.5 years to 2 years ever since because
PCR testing worked. He just told you they tested for it and they found it. He tells you that PCR testing works and that they put it in places. But he's not actually telling you. It's remarkable. It's traitorous. It's fraudulent. He deserves to have rotten vegetables thrown at him for the rest of his life. Brian Artis is one of the worst Americans alive because he accepted the shitty script of Kevin McKernan, Robert Malone, Ditra, and DOE.
In your body, these plasmids were what got inside of you. Now they're in your cells. They're in bacteria in your cells and in your bowels, like E. coli, and what's called enterobacter cells. And they're also inside of yeast, inside of your bowels, which can be called candida.
Ooh, he's teaching. Oh, he's saying big words. He knows 3 different things that are in your gut. He's so smart. Boy, he must have been hanging out with Sabine.
Or yeast. All of that microbiome in your bowel is what they are weaponizing to be biological weapon manufacturing facilities in your own body.
So you're now creating more of that within.
You are nonstop making the venom proteins over and over and over and over and over as long as those bacteria, yeast, and your cells are in your body manufacturing it.
I don't know what to say anymore, ladies and gentlemen, but there was an anticipated rise in all-cause mortality. They can't
that we see that the birth rates are declining worldwide. And we know that certain vaccines not only were intentional to limit birth cohort.
Do you see that the birth rate is going to decrease? It's actually right there in the population pyramid. The birth rate would have been predicted to decrease like right around here when these people started to have babies and we started to tell them that having more than 2 babies was selfish. You know, like my bamboozled brother who didn't have any kids. Like the kids that are growing up now. The birth rate is not going down because of vaccines, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry, but it's not. But it is an illusion of consensus among the health freedom movement that it is. They even made a movie about it, CHD, because they don't want you to know about the population pyramid and about how easily they could lie about it. Just like Mary Holland will never tell you that most autism on the autism spectrum disorder is not from vaccines, and that part of the reason why they keep this ever-expanding definition is because they're trying to cloud and muddy the water about how vaccine damage occurs and how it shows up and how rare it is or it isn't. Because Mary Holland is part of that malevolent script. And that's why she's telling you now that the birth rate is going down because of vaccines.
We did a really important film called Infertility, a Diabolical Agenda that you can watch on CHD TV. But we know that the births have declined, right? The birth and the levels of miscarriages and congenital defects have been increasing. So something very that we see that the birth rates are declining worldwide.
There's no way that she doesn't know. There's no way that Robert F. Kennedy doesn't know. There's no way that Jay Bhattacharya doesn't know, because I've told them all to their face on Zoom and in person at barbecues over tacos. I've explained to them the population pyramid. I've explained to them how PCR, how ventilators, how supplementary oxygen, how antibiotics, how remdesivir, midazolam, how financial incentives and PCR fraud and the opioid crisis have all contributed to this illusion of a mystery virus. And they all don't care because they're all on Robert Malone's malevolent script that includes viruses going endemic, and the biggest danger of zoonosis being endemic. The idea that a zoonotic virus could go endemic and contribute to death in the future forevermore. Endemicity is neither a proven process nor a proven endpoint. It's just a background, ladies and gentlemen, that was misconstrued by PCR, and it's just placebo that allowed them to roll these shots out without injuring millions and millions more. None of these people will usefully question PCR because it's still being used now, because that is one of the primary new remnant streams that they are using to assemble the genetic data that they need. Tomorrow we're going to do a paper which admits that the human genome is a lot more complicated than the Human Genome Project said it was. And we just sequenced some more shit recently, and boy, now we really got it this time. So essentially, they're kind of announcing it was completed again, or they did it again, or they're doing some more of it, or something. I don't know. It's all bullshit, ladies and gentlemen. And the reason why it's all bullshit is because this is for all the marbles. It's for the grandchildren of Earth. They want us to teach these lies to our grandkids so that the grandkids never, ever learn. The only way we can do it, and the only way we can avoid it, is to fly our own direction. You want to know who the traitors are? Most of them, or a lot of them, are on this screen, are related to the people on this screen. Thanks very much for being here. Sorry I needed so many days off. It's a lot of work being here by myself, and it's a lot of work trying to get these other things done in the background on this shoestring budget. May 30th, 2025, a lot of these guys were on a paper together with Steve Hatfill, basically a giant admission that they are all part of this show. I believe that my track record shows me as somebody who has made more progress than almost anybody alive. I don't think I've made as much progress as Brandy Vaughn made in her short period of time between 15 and 18. I don't know if I made as much progress as Tony Bark made in her brief anti-vax career, but I know where I am now. And where I am right now is intramuscular injection of any combination of substances with the intent of augmenting a healthy human is dumb. Transfection was always a crime, and viruses are not pattern integrities. I've actually made some progress, though. I think you can say it more simply that intramuscular injection is just a dumb idea from the late 1800s. Transfection of healthy humans was a crime, and RNA cannot pandemic. Thank you very much for being here. I'll try and see you again tomorrow, hopefully a little bit earlier. I'm going to go to the gym now. Love you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The voice that you hear is that of Jonathan Couey, coming to you live from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in the back of my garage. You can PubMed me and find out who I am. You can see me in that book with Bobby, and I used to do barbecues with Jay Bhattacharya. Got a couple websites, got a couple YouTube channels. I need you to share this work, please, ladies and gentlemen. Share it with everybody you know. And the best way to do that is go to gigaohmbiological.com and share it that way. Thanks for being here. See you again tomorrow.